Hello and welcome to Doubles and Trebles. It's Premier League 2022 finals night. We've had 16 weeks of action up and down the country and around Europe. And it's Europe where we go to for the final in Germany on Monday, the 13th of June. It's a strange day and it's a bit of a strange country in terms of a big Premier League final. But we're in Germany. We're in Berlin. There's 4 players left. Van Gerwen, Clayton, Joe Cullen and James Wade. They finished in the top 4 in the league format. 4 players didn't make it. We don't really need to lull on those, but lots to look forward to. We'll just run through the odds. Van Gerwen is the 6-4 favourite, followed by Johnny Clayton, who won it last year. He's looking to retain at 7-4 to win. James Wade 6-1, and Joe Cullen is a similar price at 13-2. So it's the top 2 seeds, deservedly so, top of the market pie, man. Straight off the bat, as we stand now, and before we get stuck into the 2 semi-finals and potentially the final, where would your money be at this stage?
Yeah, cheers for that, Adam. Well, I mean, Johnny Clayton and Michael Van Gerwen, if you were to believe the market, we may as well just skip to the final, because it really has been sort of marked up as if these very one-sided affairs. And to be fair, if we have a little delve into the actual results from the past 16 weeks, Johnny Clayton and MVG have been the best 2 players by far. Clayton winning featuring in 8 out of the 16 finals, and MVG featuring in 7 out of the 16 finals, compared to Wade 5 and Cullen 4. So they have certainly been the most consistent. But for me, there's no way that you can quantify that into one night of action. These 4 are all very capable on their night, and while I do think that MVG and Clayton are the likeliest finalists, I couldn't be having them at the prices. So yeah, I'd be looking at the other 2 with great interest, to be honest.
Well, we'll start with Joe Cullen there, Pie Man, because he will play in the first game against Clayton. He went into night 16. It was really the only game that mattered on the final night in Newcastle. It was a straight shootout between Joe Cullen and Peter Wright. I was wrongly with Peter Wright, and you was with Joe Cullen. It was Cullen who came through and really, battled it out and showed a lot. I mean, of the 8 players in the Premier League this year, Cullen was the most inexperienced at this level, particularly in the Premier League. And yeah, he's had to grit through a few games to really rack up his points, famously beating MVG in Holland in a final. He's had to do it on the final night against Peter Wright as well. So he's going to be going in against Johnny Clayton. But I mean, there's one thing we need to note is about the final. So we've been playing the best of 11 legs so far in the 16 weeks in the lead up to this. On finals night, the semis are best of 19, so first to 10, and the final is best of 21, so first to 12. But can we really realistically see an upset? It's all well and good, Pie Man, saying, they're a bit short, 6-4 and 7-4. Shall we take them on? But realistically, do we think that Cullen or Wade can get an upset against the big 2?
Yeah, I think they can. I really do think they can. I think, yes, I'm not saying that they're not worthy favourites, but it's too much disparity for me. Like, to come out on top on the night, Johnny Clayton is a 7-4 chance, Joe Cullen a 13-2 chance. That's a huge, huge difference. That is like, they're making him seem like a rag really there, and he's anything but. Let's not forget, to get to this stage, he's had to go semi-final, win, semi-final just to qualify. So arguably, you could say that he's kind of the form player in terms of the Premier League format itself. He's certainly come in there, as you say, sneaked in at the last minute with a bit of momentum. He'll have to be at his very best to beat Johnny Clayton. And Johnny Clayton's such a consistent player, you would think that the increased format may favour the Ferret over Cullen. But one thing I would say about Joe Cullen is his head-to-head record with Johnny Clayton is pretty well balanced, and these 2 are good friends that go way back. So that should relax him on arguably the biggest night of his career, should he lift the Premier League. I think you'd have to say that. So I give him a chance. I think Clayton is the likeliest winner, but I think, I like a value play, and I don't think this is just putting him up for the sake of it, putting an outsider up for the sake of it. I genuinely do think he is a bit too big to prevail against Clayton in what is essentially just a one-off game, first to 9 or 10 legs. Really, these players of this standard, they can turn each other over. I'd be quite happy to take on Johnny Clayton, and that's someone who backs Johnny Clayton quite frequently, as for his sheer consistency. But it is the nature of this Premier League. It's a one-night knockout format, and I think you have to say that he has a fair chance of an upset, Cullen. On the other semi-final, I do worry about Wade over that format. I would fancy him to beat Van Gerwen over 6, but I just think that little bit extra. Sometimes with James Wade in this Premier League, we've seen him show flashes of quality, but he has also kind of fallen over the line at times. He has these patches where he plays extremely well, but when his cold periods are a lot colder than a Van Gerwen or a Clayton or a Cullen. You know, he doesn't just drop down to tons and 140. He can drop off the face of the earth. And I think if Wade has a little blip over a 9, you know, first to 9 or 10 legs, someone like Van Gerwen will punish him. He will reel off 3 or 4 legs. Wade really does need a lot more pieces of the puzzle to fall into place to upset Van Gerwen, in my opinion. And I think that's why Joe Cullen at 13-2, he is a bet. But James Wade, while I'd like to get with him, and I've been very impressed with him in this Premier League format, I couldn't personally go with him. So it would be Cullen that I would land on. Likely winners, as I said, Van Gerwen and Clayton. You can't argue with it. They've been the two most consistent. They've shown themselves time and time again that they're very reliable operators. I think Van Gerwen will have been stung by a couple of final losses he's had in recent weeks, but this is the one he's really got his eyes on. This is the one he values this very highly. He'll have been disappointed to miss out on top of the table to Johnny Clayton, and he'll feel like he's got a point to prove. And if they do meet in the final, it's going to be fireworks.
Just on the outsiders, as you've covered there, Pine Man, I would agree with you. I'd much rather be with Cullen at 13-2 than Wade at 6-1. I know they're very similar prices, and Wade was ripping it up. And I said to you, and I think I said on the channel, that it was the best I've ever seen him. I think it was night 10 where he made the final and averaged 105 in the final. Wade, he's made his fair share of finals and winning some as well. But what to note, on May the 12th, the weekend before that, Wade fell ill in Germany. And was in hospital for a couple of nights. Had to withdraw from the Sheffield event on night 14. He then came back night 15 and got beat 6-3, averaging 80 in the first round. And then he's gone out in the first round on the final night as well, averaging just 91. So this break in action around 2 weeks between the final league phase night and finals night could well help James Wade in his recovery from whatever the illness was. I don't think there was many details around it, to be fair. So that could well have helped him. And obviously, if he can recapture some of that earlier form he was showing approximately 8 weeks ago, he was absolutely mustard then, and he'll be reveling in an opportunity against Van Gerwen, an opportunity to make the final. I think he's made the final of the Premier League before, has he not, Pine Man, Wade?
He has, yeah. And look, he's not a man to be discounted lightly, but what you say about his illness is totally right. You know, if you ever wanted, you know, if any of these 4 players needed to come in, as I say, and be at their very best, it's Wade. And there's a big, massive red flag there to say that he may not be at his best because of that. And I think, you know, coming up against Van Gerwen, we've said it time and time again in the last couple of months. This is as good as we've seen Van Gerwen for a long, long time. Yes, he's not always getting over the line, but it's just the consistency to hit that level time and time again. And I think you really have to fancy him to turn up there and average the best part of 99. Is James Wade going to be able to go with that? On the last few weeks since that illness, you have to say no. I think there was a period, as you quite rightly point out, for about a month where he was the best player in the Premier League and maybe even the best player in the world for that period. And he has got that game in him. And if Van Gerwen is not at it and it descends into a battle, we all know Wade can do it. I don't want to just trot out cliches. You can't write him off. But as I say, it's Clayton and Cullen, the game that interests me more from getting with the outsider perspective.
Just before we get on to the crunch question, Pine Man, being in Berlin with a couple of English lads, a Welsh lad, and obviously Van Gerwen from Holland, you've been to a lot more live darting events than me. How do you see the crowd playing? Who will be their favourite on the night or in the final, for example?
It's interesting. I think the crowd do have a part to play, but I think possibly not as much as they would in the UK. And I think that's a good thing. I don't anticipate we'll see the same levels of booing. You do worry that these things do kind of transcend, and we might get a few idiots in there. But generally, German darts is a sport on the rise, and the fans I've come into contact with from Germany have all been super enthusiastic. I'm sure they're absolutely thrilled to have an event of this magnitude in their own home nation. Maybe in a few years we could see Germans in the Premier League and in the final stage of the Premier League. They've got some great talent coming through, but I generally think they're kind of connoisseurs of the game on the whole, and I think there'll be a pretty respectful crowd who are just hoping to see good darts. I think it could favour Michael Van Gerwen potentially, because English crowds do have a bit of a habit of getting on Van Gerwen's back, and I think the fact that he would have been coming up against 2 Englishmen or Clayton, they would have been more likely to go anti Van Gerwen. certainly in terms of booing on his doubles and stuff. We've seen it in big matches at the World Championships in recent years where, because he's this big enigma and he is somebody that everybody wants to beat. The crowd do buy into that in England a little bit and get on his back, and I don't think that'll be the same in Germany. So that could help him. Personally, I don't think Van Gerwen lets the crowd affect him as much as some other players, but I think it can only be a positive for him in that perspective.
Right, I'm going with Van Gerwen. I know it's obvious, but 3, 4, 5 years ago, he would have been odds on in this little setup that we've got here with these 4 players. Any 4 players. He's 6-4. I think that he'll beat Wade, and that's the main play there, Pieman, because I think he's got the easier of the semi-finals. He's got the easiest of the 3 opponents he could have had. So yeah, I'm quite happy with Van Gerwen at 6-4. I think you're going to be with Cullen, but I'm just going to give you the chance to confirm that.
Yeah, well, let's say I'll go with the winner of Cullen Clayton, and I think from a monetary perspective, it has to be Joe Cullen has to be the selection just for the reasons stated. But look, I think we all appreciate that the most likely final is Van Gerwen Clayton, and it would be a fitting end to the Premier League because they've been the best 2 players. They never failed to deliver. Some of the games they've had in this Premier League format, it's just been a desperate shame that they've only been 11 legs. And maybe on Monday we'll see one go to 21 legs. So you wouldn't be surprised if it went all the way, would you really?
Yeah, and like you say, it would be the obvious one because they finished on 40 points, Clayton, 31 points, Van Gerwen, which is a big gap, 9 points. And then, and then the other guys are on 25 and 24. So they're clearly the 2 best players. And it's obvious for us to say, and on the odds as well, that they're going to be making the final.
And let me just say before we move on that it would be wrong to not mention Johnny Clayton. I've made this case for Joe Cullen as a value selection. But if Johnny Clayton goes back-to-back and wins back-to-back Premier League titles, that is putting him right up there on the pedestal with some of the greats of darts. If somebody wins back-to-back Premier Leagues in the standard that we currently live in as well, this isn't, no disrespect to Phil Taylor, this isn't 15, 20 years ago where one player's averaging 10 points more than the rest. This is brutal format. We've seen every single player in that league this year has turned up at points and averaged 105, 106. If he can go back-to-back and win that, having never played in the Premier League before last year, it's a serious achievement. So, yeah, good luck to him.
Yeah, right. Just on the format generally, this has been the first year of the new format. I'm on record saying it was very much needed even for me. It reinvigorated my interest in the Premier League, and I'd very much waned to almost a standstill before then. I don't mind admitting that. I was really quite into it early doors, but some people made the argument it got a little bit repetitive. I've not got the stats, but we saw a lot of repeat fixtures, if you like, which is going to happen. The same 8 players playing each other for 16 weeks. There was a couple of weeks where we had players missing. I think Going Price missed some through a hand injury. Anderson missed a couple through COVID. Wade, as we've already mentioned. So that was a spanner in the works that no one could do anything about. But my only criticism would be there's too many standard league nights at 16. I would maybe cut that down to 12. I know it's a cash cow, Pie Man, and you've told us that before on the channel. But yeah, 16 nights just felt a little bit long to me. And my thoughts on the participation of certain players like Gary Anderson. I can almost guarantee that won't be the case next year. But yeah, just your thoughts on the format as a whole.
I think pros and cons. I think you have to be fair and say that if I look on social media, there's a lot of actual negativity still knocking around on this format, which surprises me because I think it's a vast improvement, as you say, on what we had previously. It needed a freshen up. They gave it a freshen up. And in the early weeks, it was fantastic. But the skeptical is always going to be, how is it going to be by week 14, 15, 16? And all in all, it is very tough to make a product last and be interesting with the same 8 personnel for 16 weeks. It is going to get boring however you dress it. So for me, the way that they maybe look at this is, okay, this format of have it playing to a final and playing to a winner on the night clearly works. How do we make it more interesting? For me, the quality is there in darts. Why not expand it and get 16 players or even, 12, 14 players in there? I say 16 because you could do it a round robin random draw on every night. There you've got more faces, you've got more quality, and I don't think there's a shortage of quality there at all, because you look at some of the players that missed out on this year alone. Luke Humphries has arguably been the best player in the world this year, and he he could have walked into this format, and there's plenty of other names who feel like they should have been there as well. If you expand it and then add maybe a random draw element to it, where the crowd in attendance on the night get to see the draw as it happens, that could keep it fresh. But I think ultimately you have to say that it's been a win for the PDC. They have freshened it up. They've added excitement to it, and I think they shouldn't be scared to refine it again. Say this worked, but maybe this didn't, and take that feedback on board from people. You hear a lot of people who have a lot of opinions, but not many people actually come up with answers. And ultimately, as you pointed out, I do believe it is a cash cow. I believe it's vital for darts that they get this grandstand roadshow where they go around the country, get that ticket money in. It's got to give something back to the sponsors, give something back to the top players. And yeah, I think they did a good job of it, really. We hear Gerwyn Price moaning about the format, but I don't think it's any coincidence that the players moaning about the format are generally ones that don't qualify for finals. And you don't really hear Johnny Clayton and Michael van Gerwen moaning, do you? So, no disrespect to Gezi, but I think if he was sitting second or top, we wouldn't be hearing those complaints.
Yeah, and I think they felt lucky with the final being in Berlin by accident, really. But I think that's a big, massive win as well, because it just brings it to a new audience, a new feel. They're testing the water for future majors, potentially on the continent or beyond. So I think that's going to turn out to be a big positive as well, being it in Berlin. And like I say, it's on Monday, the 13th of June. So a bit of it's definitely not a Thursday like normal, and it's not a weekend either. So that's a quirky one as well. But hopefully it gets plenty of viewers in. So I've gone pretty boring and straightforward with Van Gerwen. Pieman thinks whoever wins the opening semi-final will go on to win, and Joe Cullen, of the two, at 13-2, is the best value available. So thanks for watching throughout the season. Brilliant to have Pieman back, and there's plenty more darts content to come. Speak soon.